Well, Prince Philip was born on the island of Corfu in 1921 at a house called Mon Repos, which means my place of rest. It was the summer residence of his parents, Prince and Princess Andrew of Greece, and he was the youngest of 5 children and the only son. His older sisters, the 4 older sisters, ranged in age between 15 and 7, I think. So I can imagine him being rather a spoilt little child with lots of, female attention. And he was a longed-for son, so presumably his mother felt a great support as well for him. And he had an English nanny called Miss Roos, so it was a very female-dominated environment. But he didn't last very long in Greece because there was a civil war, not a civil war, a war with Turkey, I should say. And aged at about 6 months, the family was forced to evacuate the island, and King George V sent a gunboat, the Queen's grandfather, and they went into exiles, mainly into near Paris, living near Paris, and visiting England quite a lot. So although he's dubbed Phil the Greek, and I know Spitting Image always had him running a kebab van as a kind of a Greek tradition, but he's had very little to do with Greece. And in fact, the Greek royal family are not Greek. He hasn't got a drop of Greek blood. They came from Denmark, so his surname is Schleswig-Holstein-Sonderburg-Glücksburg, which is very un-Greek. And so he spent his childhood really mainly in France, the first 10 years. The problem, I think, when he came to marry Princess Elizabeth was that his sisters had Nazi connections. The eldest one, Margarita, had married a man called Gottfried of Hohenlohe-Langenburg, who was a Nazi. The sister that was killed in a plane crash was called Cecile, and both she and her husband had joined the Nazi Party in 1937. The youngest sister also joined the Nazi Party, Sophie, and her husband was Prince Christopher of Hesse, a descendant of Queen Victoria, who became an SS colonel and head of one of the Nazi intelligence units. And it was worked out later that at one point during World War II, Prince Philip and his brother-in-law, Christopher of Hesse, were actually fighting opposite each other off Italy during a campaign there. And worse of all, Christopher of Hesse's brother, Philip, was a stormtrooper. Prince Philip of Hesse was a stormtrooper and a Luftwaffe reserve officer, and was Hitler's personal emissary to Mussolini at one point. So there was a Nazi connection, which was quite difficult. So that's why when they married, Princess Elizabeth married Philip in 1947, the sisters were effectively banned from the wedding, which according to Lady Pamela Hicks, Philip's cousin, who I interviewed, they minded greatly, the sisters, although as she pointed out, they weren't exactly stormtroopers themselves, but it was their association, their husbands, that was the problem, I suppose. Prince Philip's relationship with Russia is quite interesting. His grandmother was Victoria of Hesse, born Princess Victoria of Hesse. Her sister was the ill-fated Tsarina Alexandra of Russia, who was married to Nicholas II. And if you know the story of Nicholas and Alexandra, in the end they were all murdered, the Tsarina and their daughters and the heir, much longed for heir, Alexis. And also their sister, there was another sister for Victoria and Alexandra called Elizabeth, and she too was murdered in 1918 by the Bolsheviks. I went on a state visit to Russia in 1994 when the Queen and Prince Philip met Boris Yeltsin, and Prince Philip went to the site of a convent founded by Elizabeth. She later became a saint, made a saint by the Russian church. And if you go to Westminster Abbey, there are certain 20th century martyrs, statues of them on the west front of Westminster Abbey, and one of them is Philip's great aunt, Elizabeth. And one interesting thing is when they found the bones, or wanted to analyse the bones, I think they'd already found them, of the Tsar and Tsarina, is they used DNA provided by Prince Philip to analyse the bones to prove that they were in fact those of the Russian imperial family. So, so it's quite an interesting connection.